We will serve, we will be of service. The question is, to whom will we serve? It's implicit bias, so the answer to that is you. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon, and Implicit Bias Radio is back on the air. It is both a privilege and an honor to have you back with us. On a week where, of course, we'll have weekly whiskey, we'll solve the problems of the world, and we'll ask the question, who do we serve? So to answer it, the first thing we have to do is make sure that that answer is singular. The Bible warns us against perilous paths of serving two masters. After all, juggling two bosses sounds like a recipe for disaster. Imagine trying to please both your mother-in-law and your boss, who is your wife, at the same time. Need I say more? There's clear guidance on the dangers of attempting to serve those two masters, by the way. Matthew 6:24 states, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." In other words, two masters implies a conflict of interest and a continual state of moral and spiritual turmoil. This principle actually transcends the literal interpretation of serving God and money. It actually extends to any duality in our devotion, whether it be material possessions, status, or earthly desires. I mean, picture trying to balance a diet of kale smoothies and bacon-wrapped donuts and the havoc that would wreak upon not just your life, but your toilet as well. But I digress. Look, when our allegiances are divided, we compromise our relationships and our relationship with God and open ourselves to the influences of worldly temptation. It's like trying to watch two TV shows at once. You end up missing the plot of both. In reality, we attempt to serve two masters. We end up torn between conflicting desires and motivations. This breeds confusion, dissatisfaction, familiarity, contempt, and ultimately spiritual death. The Apostle Paul actually warned against this. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please the flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. In other words, you can't plant pineapples all over your front yard and expect manna from heaven. Trust me, I've tried. Our choices have consequences. And serving two masters invariably leads to reaping the fruits of our conflicted loyalties. We cannot expect to grow spiritually or experience the fullness of life while entertaining divided allegiances. It's like trying to text and drive. Something's bound to crash, and it won't be pretty. This is why we have to be singular about our principles, and we have to put our principles first. Because if we put our principles first, we're separated from making our decisions based upon emotions and desires of this world. Desires like possessions, pleasure, prestige, and maybe the worst of all, pride. To live a truly blessed life is to align ourselves with divine will and divine purpose. We have to seek thy kingdom, thy will, not ours. This can perhaps be the most difficult thing of all, because we, ourselves, the id, we are the most difficult master to cast aside. We wish it was as easy to get rid of self as apparently it was for John Mayer to get rid of Taylor Swift, but it's just not. We are the master that must be usurped. The evils of serving two masters are clear and unequivocal. Our devotion must be undivided and our allegiance singular. The consequences of divided loyalties, they're far-reaching. They impact both our spiritual well-being and our relationship with God and every other person on this planet. Which means we not only have to serve one master, but we have to serve the right one. In other words, our implicit bias, we have to serve truth instead of deception. We have to serve facts instead of fraud. We have to serve light instead of dark, and we have to serve others instead of self. We should also, by the way, serve whiskey. Now, I don't mean like we should actually be subservient to whiskey. I mean, we should provide it to those whom that will be sitting in our particular area and those that we will be of service. Because if we do serve enough whiskey, there's that old saying, a drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts. At least that's what happens if you watch and listen to too much Implicit Bias Radio. Weekly whiskeys are back. That means Implicit Bias Radio back on the air. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. We are in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair. And for those who want to see a really pretty television video shot, just look at the shot at the bar. And I don't mean the people sitting at the bar. I mean the stuff at the bar. And that is not to pick at the people at the bar. They are fantastic people. But the stuff on the bar is beautiful. And here's why. At some point in the next month and a half, 2 months, every week we are going to give away a bottle of what you see on the bar, except for Deep Blue, the Implicit Bias Infinity bottle. We just can't give that away. That stays here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL. But every other bottle that's up there, we are going to give some away, including tonight. We are going to give away, on this recording, a bottle of Elmer T. Lee. True unobtainium. That bottle not up there, but trust me, we're going to give it away. You'll have to go to Mr. Lester's to get it. So let me get us started on our weekly whiskey segment, where we are going to taste this Knob Creek single barrel available from our weekly whiskey network at New News Market, Youngsville, Scott, Milton, Maurice. This one comes in at over 120 proof, and I'm real curious to see what the crew thinks. Let's start by introducing you to the crew at the bar. He is Danny Izzo. Danny, it's a pleasure to have you. It's been a while since you've been back in the TSPL.
It has been a while.
Yeah, and that microphone, and this is why we had a stand before, which we replaced with the pedestal, because Danny, you and I are about the same height, and that microphone pedestal gets kind of high. So just go ahead and leverage it as you need throughout the course of this show. The other person at the bar, Father Joe Campion of St. Edmund's Parish here in Lafayette. Father, it's a pleasure to have you. We need someone here to keep us Catholic.
Good to be back once again. Yes.
We're going to put that yoke on your shoulders.
Okay.
His yoke is light. This one is not, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because Caleb has already had to apologize once off camera.
Yeah, it won't be the last time.
And I'm sure that I'll have to apologize before it's all over.
I love how Walker's like, crap. He's got his space button ready. Right?
Yeah.
Space bar button ready.
That is Caleb Morse, the Rustic Renegade. It is a pleasure to have you back here in the TSPL. I'm not going to be here next week, but you will.
Yep. And I was going last week, and you were here.
Yep. So we're going to rotate for a couple of weeks. We've got a show. The industry lingo, as they say, it's in the can, and we don't mean like in the portalette. We mean it just sits there like it's canned, like it's preserved. Maybe we'll use that on the show. We'll just call it, we've got a can in the portalette. We're going to open it up so you can smell the odorous tones of Implicit Bias Radio that's been sitting there.
I like that. Marinating.
Okay, that was funny. Ring the bell. Somebody ring the bell at the bar. Thank you. All right, let's dive into our weekly whiskey. This Knob Creek single barrel, available at New News, officially 120 proof, 60% alcohol by volume. It is a single barrel select bourbon. Straight out of Kentucky for New News Fresh Market. Let's start at the bar and see what the crew thinks about this offering at 120 proof. Danny, I see you're like, you've got the glass in one hand, you're going for the mic with the other. You're normally a rye guy, so I'm curious as to what you think of this.
Very much, and I'm not usually a high proof guy either. And this is a single barrel with a double barrel impact.
That's a great call out. Yeah, I believe this one hits a lot of the right notes.
It really does. It's a little rough for my taste normally, but it's a nice bourbon.
Okay.
And
I'm
you get happy to be this far down in the glass.
And we're only really in the second segment of the show. This is going to get interesting as we get into hour two. Do you get, Danny, those notes that you like typically off of a rye? And that's why I ask this.
I do. I get some spice. I don't get the peanut butter you talked about. Mm-hmm. I'll put some in my mouth when I get home and see how that works.
Yeah, go ahead and put it on a mat for like your dog, a lick mat, and you can see how that works, right? That'll be a fun way to spend the rest of the evening.
But I do get some nice spice notes.
Okay.
And maybe a little bit of citrus. Not as much corn as I would expect from a proof like this.
Agreed. I don't get a ton of corn here.
Which is fine with me.
Okay. Father Joe. Curious to hear your thoughts on this. As you like to say, wherever there's a priest, at least one, there's usually a fifth.
Fifth. Always a fifth, yes. Yeah, I tend to agree with Danny on this. This is a tough, to me, to the palate, tough 120 proof.
So this hits you a little harder than normal because
Yes, it does.
you're not a high proof guy.
No, but last time I was here on the show with Father Taj, you had a 120 proof that was very mellow. And I can't remember the name, but it was very mellow. It was tough on the taste buds right away. Most times, as you know, I can't pick up flavors, but for this, all I can think of is something very smoky. I feel like it's smoky.
I do get a lot of smoke on this.
Okay.
I get almost, you know how if you burn a stick, a
Yes.
small stick,
Yep.
and you get that nose on it of the smoke after
Yes.
it goes out. It's not necessarily campfire. It is just
Right, but if you roll to crush your tongue and hold it there for a while, say, wow, to me it's smoky.
you
but
get just that little bit on the back end.
Yeah, but it's got a bite to it.
It does. So here's the funny part. I love that bite.
Yeah.
I love that 120 proof. I love that, as we like to call it here on the show, that little bit of aggression
Yeah.
that you can get with certain things at certain proofs. And this one to me hits those notes. So for our, as we like to call it, flowery description of whiskey, because Walker, who has a camera but does not have a whiskey because it's Lent and that is what he's given up for Lent. So congratulations to you, Walker, in doing part of this show. We recognize that you have a problem and you were addressing. I'm kidding. Walker does not have a problem. Walker is just doing what really any good Catholic Christian should do. He's looking at his life and saying, how do I make it better? This might be a way to create a little more discipline, because this show, as we know, will erode that discipline if you like whiskey. So someone who does not have that discipline is the Rustic Renegade. Caleb, I'm curious to your thoughts on this Knob Creek single barrel 120 proof select from New News.
I was trying to figure out the flavor. I just figured it out. So on the nose, I get like heavy caramel followed by cherry and peanut brittle.
Peanut brittle. God, I hate you.
Then here's where I'm gonna get you to though. On the palate, I get cherry, then I get oak, like an oak smoke.
Yeah.
So I get that oak smoke flavor. Then what I thought was peanut brittle on the flavor actually turns out to be the Atkins peanut butter candy bars. They have the little vertical lines. Remember, they're like a brownish gray color.
Never had one.
Yes, you have.
Nope.
Every young man who was sitting down in church, someone's grandmother had these in her purse, and they were covered in purse lint and clear wrappers. And you were so happy during altar call.
So first of all, you said every young man. I am apparently the old man. If you look at our comments,
Not in this room.
no, well, regardless.
I'm going to show you the picture, and you're going to be like,
I-
I've eaten those.
Nope. Never.
Oh, you're
nope.
a liar.
Nope.
Father, forgive
nope.
him.
Never liked him. Nope.
Never liked him
Looked
doesn't
at
mean you had him.
Looked at him, smelled him, said, I'm not eating that. Nope, didn't happen. The other part is apparently I'm a douchebag as well, if you look at the comments. So the douchebag, the old man, is back. And no, so that means I've not had that candy.
What does it take for me to get these titles? Like, I thought I said offensive things.
Oh, no.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, apparently I say the most offensive things. It's okay.
Man.
And the things that I say, really 35 seconds of them aren't. But that's okay.
I'm impressed you can last that long.
I am. Ring the bell. That was good. Ring the bell. That was good. No, look, I relish in the fact of, I kind of look at that whole perspective as who am I aggravating?
Valid.
And if I'm aggravating those people, we must be saying the right things on this show. So go back to this. You get peanut brittle. Okay. This is why I hate you. I get peanut brittle. It's not peanut butter.
Nope.
It is peanut brittle. That is so incredibly accurate on the palate with
this
this.
is delicious. At 120 proof, y'all think this is too aggressive? Oh my God.
I hate peanut brittle. I love this. This is so good. It is such a smooth drink to me at 120 proof.
God, yes.
This is problematic. If you were to sit down with 3 or 4 good buddies, have a conversation that's not recorded,
3, 4.
that's not recorded, which this one is,
Snap.
and just let it go. That I'm sure would get me canceled in more than one place.
This is the perfect bourbon for a campfire and reminiscing.
Yes.
This is what you want to have sitting around on like the cheap Walmart plastic chairs or logs, nothing fancy, and just bringing back the old days and talking about how it used to be. This is that bourbon.
I might even go a step farther than peanut brittle.
Okay.
This is peanut butter caramel fudge.
Oh, hold on. I need that.
Because I get bourbony McBourbon on this. I get everything that you would want and expect when you are tasting a bourbon. And I also get that little bit of peanut butter on it.
It's that homemade fudge where
Yes.
they have hunks of peanut and like candied peanuts and all that in there, not the regular ones.
Correct. Like this is the one where they put on the show for you when they're making it, and then they
Yeah.
charge you like $640 million a pound when it's over.
And it's worth every penny.
That's what this is, and it is worth every penny. You bankrupt yourself to get it for you and your kids. You end up sitting around in a hotel room in some big city where they put these fudge places in.
This is
and you're
driving up to Pikes Peak in Colorado,
Yeah.
stopping at the gift shop and getting it and eating it, watching the sunset
yeah,
in the afternoon.
and you're looking at your bank account like I am now negative $640 million. I've run myself bankrupt buying this fudge that cost 25 cents to
you
make.
got to stop checking
That's
the bank
what this
account. We
is.
stopped doing that when COVID happened.
Yeah, well, fair. So I'm on board with this. I actually really like this. I'm like with you, Caleb. I think this is fantastic. Danny?
But the other thing, somebody mentioned the charred, and this reminds me a little bit of some of those whiskeys that have the charred spires.
Almost like a double oaked.
Yep.
Right, with a charred spire of oak or something in the whiskey that soaks for a while.
So there is a brand that attempts to create essentially artificial aging.
They use
by
UV light.
dropping a piece of wood that has been charred into the bottle.
Right.
So what they do is they take those spires
Yep.
of charred oak and everything else, and then they bombard this before it's bottled. They bombard it in a cylinder with UV light to chemically age it. When I say chemically age it, when you look at the molecular level of the composition of those bourbons and those drinks versus these, it matches identically. A scientist will tell you it tastes the exact same. I think there's a difference.
Oh, yeah.
There's certain
There's a
things-
difference.
There are certain things that just take the work, such as salvation, that you can't shortcut to them. And a good bourbon, you can't shortcut it. So like the Spire, normally you'll get that it's more acidic, but you'll get that oakiness, that smokiness, and it tries, but you can't hide the ignorance of youth, if that makes sense.
This whiskey, and I don't see an age statement on this. Caleb, did you see an
I
age
didn't
statement
see
on the
one.
bottle?
I didn't see one.
I didn't see one either. Whether it's 4 years old, whether it's 5 years old, this drinks like an 8 to 12, in my opinion. And it sits as a long finish on the palate. It is a little oily, so it's viscous. You can take a sip and you don't have to run right back to it. It is everything you would expect in a high dollar, high proof whiskey. And look, Knob Creek does a lot of mass production stuff. This almost tastes boutique. And that's what I really like about it. That is what to me makes this particular Knob Creek so special, such a great whiskey, such a great flavor, and something that I could sit and drink with good friends. Something that I would even sit down with people that I vehemently disagree with and pour for them as a token of generosity to have a conversation to see if we have any middle ground and see if at some point we both serve one master, not ourselves. So let's go ahead and rate this on the Morse Whiskey rating code. And we're going to play What Would You Pay for the What Would You Pay championship belt chain, which would somebody at the bar hold that up, show it to the camera, shake it so we can hear it in the microphone. It is loud. It is proud. Not proud like that. It is the What Would You Pay championship belt chain presented by Box Drop of Lafayette. So let's start here with the Morse Whiskey rating code. For the uninitiated to the show, the code is red. I wouldn't drink it even if it was free. It is yellow. I would drink it only if it was free. It is green. I would buy this. It is blue. I would seek this out. We're going to start at the bar. Danny, where do you rate this? And then what would you pay?
For me, it's a solid green.
Okay.
Pay. $125.
$125 for this. All right. Father Joe.
Well, personally, I would also go in the green.
Okay, so it was a little rough, but you would still buy this.
Yes, I would. Yeah.
So you started to maybe let those flavors sit and marinate just a bit.
Right. And then I also know that you two guys are the experts on this. So you're asking me the price I would pay?
Look, we are far from experts.
Yes. Well, I'm a real novice on this, but to pay for it, I would say 75.
75. All right, Caleb.
Walker, you get that finger ready? This is
Okay, Walker just edited out way too much there.
so stuff, bunch of stuff, blue. Man, Knob Creek never comes in crazy. 63.50. I wrote it down first.
So Caleb, here's my question. If they're looking for your bottle of whiskey, is yours the one that says bad mother on
Yep.
it?
MCLMM.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to side with Danny here. I love this, but this is
my
a green to me.
Oh my God.
I would buy this. It doesn't quite hit blue status. And I'm also going to give away part of my bias here because I know the price on this. So Danny, what I'm going to ask you to do is there is a drawer right in front of you that swivels out. In that drawer is a receipt.
In that receipt is an envelope. In that envelope is sand.
On that receipt, you will find Knob Creek. Read the price of this bottle into that microphone, please.
Well, the first thing that caught me is the total 584.
Yeah, okay,
12.
that's multiple bottles of whiskey. That's multiple months. That's okay.
I was under.
How much for this singular bottle of Knob Creek, single barrel proof? Because there's only one Knob Creek on there.
Be damned.
How much?
Probably. I'm hoping not, but
How much?
$59.99.
$59.99, which is what almost made me push this to the blue, just because the
Cha-ching.
price on this for this bottle of whiskey is absurd. To
Okay.
get this quality of liquid at that price is off the charts. Francisco Montalbano, congratulations. Welcome to Fantasy Island, Francisco, because this is the stuff dreams are made of.
Gee, darn the luck. I have to go see Father Russo at St. Anne's Tuesday night. Nunu's is just down the street.
And let me tell you, that new store in Maurice has all of this. So can somebody pass the what would you pay
Don't throw your
championship
back
belt
out.
chain to Caleb? He's going to wear it for the rest of the show. We know the master we serve. We're going to talk about him and ciphering through the stories where people maybe are trying to serve too many masters when we continue on this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio. The douchebag is back. The old man has another whiskey, which means more Implicit Bias Radio is back on. What's so funny about that, Caleb?
I love that other people call you that besides me.
I do too. You know, that was forbidden in our house, even though I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. My mother hated that word, but the boys still used it.
Okay, so you know what the really funny part of all of this is that the people who are commenting these things on our Instagram, by the way, if you haven't followed us for our reels on Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube, you're probably missing out because the comments are hysterical. These people actually think that we might get upset.
Yes.
These people think that their thoughts might hurt our feelings.
It's a compliment when
And
they say it.
literally, yeah, when you say it, I'm like, we're over the target, right? Because if my enemies are a bunch of morons, well, we're all right. That's the way I look at it. And if you're not keeping up with things, and if you're taking the 35-second reels that we put out of context and not listening to the whole conversation, that's not on us. It tells us of the lack of perception and the lack of attention span that we have, which might be a problem. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about what masters we serve, and it is said that money, well, it's the root of all evil, right? That's the saying. And let me tell you, there is no greater evidence of the corruption in pursuit of money through government than maybe we have experienced in the last 80 days, 90 days. So first of all, let's talk about what we have seen. What we have seen, and this is very, very telling. And look, this is not that we are thrilled about who Elon Musk is. I don't know the man. The man could be a terrible human being. I'm going to judge him by what he's done and what he's seen. If you remember, his claim to fame, where he got his start, was PayPal. And he actually came out in the last few weeks and said, when we went to PayPal, because PayPal was rooted in fraud, it was everywhere. It was riddled with fraud when he took over. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know how we figured out who the fraudsters were? When we started creating transparency, the people who screamed the quickest and the loudest were unequivocally, undoubtedly, as Bugs Bunny would say, undubitably, the fraudsters. They were the ones doing it because they were the ones making money off of it, and you were directly affecting them. So what did he do in the past 5-6 days? He actually brought the receipts. He brought the receipts with regards to Social Security. So to the crew here in the Mr. Lester's Top Secret Podcast lair, where in just a little while, we are going to give away a bottle of Elmer T. Lee. When we think about Social Security, let's start with, first of all, the fact that Social Security in and of itself is fraudulent. Anybody want to guess maybe why it's fraudulent here in the TSPL? Caleb, Danny, Father.
Is it because it's a horrible return on investment and the money doesn't actually exist?
Ring the bell. So here's the deal. I saw a great mathematical equation that said, if I put in the max into Social Security, which the max right now is $10,000. If I have put in the max, 10,000 and change. If I have put in the max over the last 30 years or 20 years, 25 years, right? When I retire, the max that I will get on my input into Social Security is $4,000 and change a month. I'm putting in $10,000 a month. Yep. I'm getting back $4,000 a month over time.
Until you expire, which won't be that long.
Correct.
That's right.
If I had put it into the S&P 500, my monthly return would be $32,000. Pause right there and think about that for a second.
But we know better, and we should tell you what to eat, what to wear, and where to put your money.
Because we're
That's
the government.
the government's job.
Because we're the government. So that's the first fraudulent premise of Social Security. Now comes the second fraudulent premise of Social Security, which is who actually has Social Security numbers. Oh, Danny, you almost lost whiskey through the nose over there. Why was that funny to you? I'm curious. Am I a clown? Am I somebody to be made fun of? Is that what I'm here for? Am I here to crack jokes for you? Am I a joke to you, Danny? Okay, no, we get where that comes from. Why was that funny to you?
Because it's so easy for people to get a Social Security number nowadays. And they've been giving them out like candy to all these people who've been coming across. I know nobody is illegal.
Ring the bell. Oh, no. No, we call things as we see them here, right?
I mean, all I did was
I
get born
understand,
to
yes.
have mine.
I don't buy into the nobody is illegal
No, understand.
crowd think.
But as was put to me by a U.S. federal prosecutor, the sheer fact that you are standing on the piece of ground that you are standing on without applying for asylum, any residency in the proper way, proves that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of being an illegal alien in this country.
And then we're going to give you a Social Security number,
which,
and in some places even allow you to vote. What the
whoa,
heck?
oh, no, not in some places.
No.
In almost every place where you have a Social Security number, you can get what?
A driver's license.
An ID.
And when you get your driver's license, you can register to vote at the same time. Gee, and you wonder why I laughed?
So that, Danny, well done. You fit into this show so well. You pick up what we're putting down ahead of schedule. Love it. Because that's the reality of the situation. And look, this is not an anti-immigration discussion. What this is that there are laws of man, there are laws of God. And really the reality is I'm not upset with the people who come here because it's not their fault that they were allowed to get away with it. The real people here, much like the people who are upset, and this is what puts the bow on this, much like the people who are upset that you are looking for fraud in federal government, in PayPal, in Social Security, right? It's not about necessarily the people who are getting away with it. It's the people who are upset that you're calling it out. Why? Because they're taking advantage of it, right? Make no mistake. The people who get Social Security numbers and get to vote, even though they are illegal aliens in this country, they are simply the tool of the people who want to manipulate them.
So it blew my mind. I talked to a friend of mine from Arizona this last week, and we're talking about voting, right? And he's like, what does it take to vote in Louisiana? I'm like, well, first off, I got to take my gun off. Secondly, I present an ID, and then they check my ID, check everything else. I have to sign a piece of paper that matches that, and then they give me another little thing that I can insert in the machine that links my vote to my ID. He goes, that's phenomenal. In Arizona, you just walk up and say, my name's Joe. That's all it is. It's like they want a name, no address, nothing, and you can vote.
And we wonder why, when you look at some of the investigations, please don't believe us on this. Please go look this up. There are investigations that show you have more voters in Arizona. Let me rephrase that. You have more votes in Arizona than more registered voters are in Arizona.
It blew my mind. And look, I've been fact checked it and everything else. So, Brad, I hope you tell me the truth. But look into it. I mean, it blew my mind that's how this works. But
it doesn't surprise me at all. I was just talking to Kavan the other day to visit his dear wife since she's convalescing from surgery, and I said, I am so happy with this Doge. I am so happy because I don't care what party for the last 40 years they've been talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. Nothing's been done. And this is finally at the time where somebody's grabbing this issue. And I don't, liberalism wants power in the federal government. Conservatism, Catholic social teaching, subsidiarity means that the power's at the local level, not at the highest level. That's where issues should be taken care of. And constitutionally, that's where it is too. Take care of the local level, and then the federal government comes in on limited occasions for the citizens. Now you've got this leviathan, this massive, massive bureaucracy that is running people's lives. And the Liberal Party wants to empower non-citizens so that they can hold on to their power. That's what it is.
Let's boil this down to a most granular level. And this thought just hit me because of some things that were said in here. There are people who are upset with Doge, who are upset with the Department of Government Efficiency, who are rooting out. Their goal is to root out fraud. Now, I want you to think about this. Synonyms for the word fraud: cheating, swindling, deceit, deception, duplicity, treachery, chicanery.
Chicanery, I haven't heard that in years.
In other words, the people who are upset with Doge, who are looking for fraud, are upset that we are calling out cheating, chicanery, trickery, lying, deceit. These people worship lying, deceit, trickery, chicanery. There's the problem. So if you don't like Doge, what you have to understand is you are truly aligning yourself and saying, I am upset that we are finding people who lie and holding them accountable. I am upset that we are holding people who are engaging in trickery, in deceit, in deception accountable. Who do you serve? Because there's a great term for someone, the great deceiver. Who do you serve if you're upset that we are calling out deceit and deception? All right, Caleb, you wanted to jump in?
I love how you used Leviathan in regards to the government. Because when we look at ancient text, right, Sumeria and everywhere else, the Leviathan was a rabid beast that couldn't be tamed, and the other gods feared it, right, because it was a devourer of people and devourer of gods. When we read the Christian text, who did God's bidding? The Leviathan was an agent of God and created by God for purpose. This government is created for the people, controlled by the people.
Supposed to be.
Should bend to the will of the people. We should not fear the Leviathan. The Leviathan should fear us. And that's the problem we have, is we've become afraid of our government when the government should be afraid of its people.
And it brings me back to who do we serve? There's a great theory about conservatism versus leftism. And there's a reason why the weak, a lot of times, err to the side of leftism, of communalism, right? Because if left to their own, the strong, on an individual basis, on a one-on-one basis, would defeat them.
They will trample the weak.
Which is why they push to a certain area. But here's the problem that they forget about. And this is why Christianity, in my opinion, becomes the target. Because the target preaches the strong should still be the strong, but they have a moral obligation to not overrun the weak.
Right.
Which means that if you are a true Christian person of strength, not only is it your job to be strong, it is your job to defend the weak from those who would go against them in deceitful ways. And the deceitful, they hate that. Because the bully, the deceitful bully, who lies about everything to the teacher and who claims to be the victim all the time, you know what that bully hates? That bully hates when they are pushing around someone less than them in the playground, and a strong, willful individual walks up and punches them in the nose, proverbially.
Well, and it goes to, we should all have something worth fighting for, be it family, faith, whatever the reason. You should have something worth fighting and dying for. If you don't, what's your purpose? What are you striving for? What are you pushing for? What are you working for? Are you here just to wake up one day and to feel sunlight and shade the next?
Show me a man without purpose, I'll show you a man without will. God gave man free will. It was the greatest gift we ever got. To give it away is a sacrilege. To walk away from it is maybe the greatest sin we could ever commit. Because trust me, as we like to say on this show, none of us are perfect. Only one perfect person walked the earth. We're all waiting for him to come back, and we bring a priest on regularly to try and keep us Christian and Catholic. Because trust me, we're not. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do our best. It only becomes when we start serving the wrong master and we think it's right, that at that point, your implicit bias, well, it's worth just as much as you are at that point, which hopefully is not who you serve. We do have to apparently serve Walker. He wants whiskey or no, he doesn't want whiskey. He just wants us to take a break. We'll be back right after this with more Implicit Bias Radio. Pattern recognition is a thing. And if we can't recognize patterns that have been in the world for, the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, well, you might be the one with the IQ of a carrot. If you're listening to this show, probably not, but that's okay. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is Implicit Bias Radio. Welcome to the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair, located somewhere in downtown Lafayette, which is a whole nother thing because, Caleb, you'll actually appreciate this.
Are you dancing?
Oh, so all I'm gonna say is I can dance. I can dance. And just so you know,
Just like Shakira, those hips don't lie.
you damn Skippy. That's a whole nother story. All right. Just ask your wife. Anyway. Sorry. I tried
Sweetheart,
not to.
I love you, and I'm biting my tongue right now.
I tried not to. It almost was
Not very hard.
It almost was a your mom joke. Oh, Danny, don't give me that opening. Don't give me that opening, Danny. We have a priest on the show. No.
I love being childish. I really
And
do.
look-
Like, why would I grow up?
And here's the best part. I can make that joke because Jackie knows that I love her like a sister, and she will laugh at that and be like, Kevon, in your dreams.
Good
Yeah,
damage,
I get it.
Good damage control. We
no,
like it.
it is. And my wife will laugh too. It's funny. But no, now I've almost lost my
I
complete
don't
train of
remember
thought.
what we're
Pattern
talking
recognition. Okay, here we go. So pattern recognition is a thing. And pattern recognition needs to look sometimes from the zoomed out view as opposed to the zoomed in view. Because zoomed out, you can see patterns sometimes at a much greater rate. So I'm going to put a name out there, and I would like to play a game here in the Top Secret Podcast Lair presented by Mr. Lester somewhere in downtown Lafayette. And this is where I was going with the whole, I shot a video at my house where we're giving away this bottle of whiskey, and I had to actually change the location settings.
Really?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's like, do I really want
Oh, that's a valid
everyone
point.
knowing where my house is?
No, that's a valid point.
Because
After the comments you're getting,
we are
really.
downloaded
my
in,
house easy to find though.
downloaded in 66 countries, 1,300 cities. We appreciate it. Okay, but back to the whole pattern recognition. We're gonna play a game. I want you to name the person. Okay, I'm
me
gonna
Hoffa.
give you some facts around this person, and I want you to tell me who it is.
Okay.
Political candidate.
Hitler.
Wrong. Running for office at a given time. Leading in the polls.
Bill Clinton.
Wrong. I didn't even know
Why
what
am I
you
the
said.
only one? Bill Clinton. Why am I the only one
What?
saying candidates?
Trump.
Oh,
Okay, running for office, Trump. Okay, so
Are you talking about currently?
hold on. No, doesn't have to be currently. Running for office. The opposing party files criminal lawsuits for things that are not criminal, they are civil,
Huey P. Long.
against this candidate.
So warfare. No.
Wait, no.
so they filed criminal-
lawfare.
Lawfare.
So
They
lawfare.
filed criminal.
So the opposing
charges.
party files criminal charges against this running candidate who is leading in the polls.
Yeah.
And it's a civil.
Oh,
Should be a civil? Is that what you said?
Should be civil, but they file it in criminal
criminal.
court.
is this tu parles français?
But wait, hold on. Father gave us a candidate because both of these people qualify.
Well, Trump, yeah.
Trump,
Wow.
And there's another one.
Marine Le Pen.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah. The
Oh,
poor
Yeah.
dear lady is in prison.
poor dear lady got sentenced to 4 years.
4 years of house arrest, I think is what they said.
So she's not in prison. House arrest.
Although, look, if you spend more than 48 hours in your house, it might feel like a prison.
I don't
but-
disagree.
But she's also barred from running for office.
Oh,
5 years?
Whoa. So that was the next criteria.
I think
A candidate that they attempt to bar from running for office.
Well, you say attempt. I thought they
Marie
did.
Le Pen. Well, Marie Le Pen, they succeeded.
right.
But they attempted to do that to
Do that
another
with Trump.
candidate.
With Trump, they tried to do that with Donald.
Okay, so now I'm going to take you one step farther.
What's that? How's that?
Hold
sound?
on, because there's a third one.
Well, a third.
There's a third. Wins the election. The government says, nope, we are declaring this election null and void. And now we are prosecuting the candidate in order to keep them off the ballot so they can't run again. Romania.
Really?
Yes. Again, please don't believe us on this. Go look this up. Pattern recognition. My father used to have a saying. I learned a lot from a wise man. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. There better not be a third time. And what we are seeing is a pattern across the globe of conservative candidates leading in the polls, running for allegedly democratically elected positions. And the minute they get in the lead, what happens?
You know,
But
I would be very curious to see when we look back at elections, democratic nations that the United States helped set up.
Oh,
And the victors,
whoa.
Well, hold on. And the victors of those elections, where the dollars came from that helped to push those elections.
Besides USAID,
USAID. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I had to sneeze
Just,
because that's where it's coming from. You and I both know it.
I wish there was a way to track that.
but this goes back even further than that, I believe.
Keep going, Danny.
because Didn't Barack Obama have a couple of his opponents disappeared? Or
Oh, that
I believe when he was running for the Illinois Senate,
that I did not know.
I believe there were some lawsuits involved that disqualified
Now the one
one
that
or more of his opponents at different times.
now the
Wait,
one
so that might show a pattern that developed over time. If we can prove that. I
now
don't
the,
look-
the one that jumps out to me is the one where it went maybe even farther. And I say maybe because I am not making allegations. I love my life. In no means would I ever consider ending it because I am Catholic and that is a grave sin. And I would not do that because I am not aspiring to this world. I'm aspiring to the next. But there was a candidate running for the U.S. Senate who had a formidable opponent. And that opponent happened to die in a odd plane crash, allegedly. Anybody know who that candidate was? Not the one who died, the one who was running, and her opponent died. Hillary Clinton. When she was running for Senate in New York, she was running against JFK Jr.
Yeah.
That's right.
I remembered him. I couldn't remember who was running.
Amazing how her opponent
Wasn't he the
happened to
pilot?
disappear. He was the pilot of the plane.
He was the pilot. Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that he was murdered. I am saying that the circumstances surrounding it made me ask some questions.
Yeah.
Father, you want to chime in here?
I do, because even though that's a good point that you make, I forgot that JFK Jr. Was running against Hillary. I forgot that I knew about the plane crash. But what's very clear, though, is this weaponizing now of the judiciary. That is just so in our face anymore. And I'm telling you, civilization in the United States or around the world, it's like, it's almost like in a basketball game, you assume that the referees are going to apply the law as according to basketball, or that the referees are going to apply it without any bias whatsoever.
Father,
I know, but
how do you spell assume? ASS,
Yeah.
U,
yes,
ME.
but if you thought every basketball game was thrown and every referee was crooked, and so what's happening now is we have a whole judiciary that is running our country and trying their ad hominem attacks on people's personalities. Nobody wants to run anymore. And we don't really have justice. Justice is giving to another person their due. This is vendetta. This is
to render each his due,
Yeah.
which has been gone
this
for a
is not
very long
justice,
time.
Exactly. But it's now on steroids now. It's just out of control.
So I love where you went with this, Father, which is this has been said by leftists in the United States. Schumer said the goal is because we put judges in place. Please don't believe us. And the judges can slow down what's trying to happen. What else is trying to happen? Walker, this is the last segment of hour one. Oh, you're killing me here. All right, hour two. We're going to give away a bottle of Elmer T. Lee. We're going to announce that giveaway. We're going to bring you more Implicit Bias Radio. We're going to have more fun because we started with 120 proof and, well, we're about halfway through the bottle of 120 proof. We'll see if we can get all the way through it. When we come back, if you are not getting hour two of Implicit Bias Radio, find us on our socials. Find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify. Make sure you even call your radio station and tell them we want hour two of Implicit Bias Radio because it's always more fun. Hour two of Implicit Bias. As Ferris Bueller would say, it is so choice. If you have the means, I highly recommend listening to the rest of the hour. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon, and I really don't believe that. I just appreciate you being here. Thank you. It is an honor to be your host for this hour of weekly whiskey tasting and solving the problems of the world as we bring you our show from the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair somewhere in downtown Lafayette. Let's set the room. Sitting in the chair, much like mine. He doesn't look like me because he's got a beard, and yeah, he's about 6 inches taller. Caleb Morris, the Rustic Renegade.
A beard, 6 inches.
Nope, don't go there.
30
Don't go there.
35,
Don't-
40 pounds.
We've all, okay, I was about to say, we've already had a your wife and your mama joke in the
Yeah,
show, so
yeah.
we don't want to go back there.
An
Right.
additional 6 inches.
And there's the your wife joke. Anyway, he is the rustic renegade. At the bar, we have Father Joe Campion, who's trying to keep us Catholic. He's going to take confession when this show is over. Father, can you do have the ability to absolve us, correct? Because we're going to need it.
Oh, you're going to need it. And I'm just trying to stay sober for the next hour so I can remember what you have to say.
Father,
know?
this is a weekly whiskey tasting. And whoa. Okay, rabbit hole. This is happening. Remember what I have to say? Because my understanding is that from most priests, when you take confession, like you walk out and you're Will Ferrell from Old School where you're like, what happened? I don't even remember. I have no idea. I blacked out.
Yeah,
Is that true?
You do have just a forgetfulness. You just put it right behind you. You do. Almost across the board, you talk to any priest, it's gone.
We often talk about staying Catholic on this show. We talk about staying Christian. And one of the things, so not all Christians believe in going to confession.
Right.
As Catholics, it is a staple of what we do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you my perspective on it. I believe that there is something to sitting in front of someone who represents God to you.
Yep.
And they are not God, but they represent God.
Yes.
And admitting, here are the things that I have done
Exactly.
that I should be ashamed of.
Yeah. Human instrumentation is throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, where God chooses unworthy people to be a conduit to the rest of the human race. And so it's no different in the sacrament of reconciliation. We priests have to go to confession. But the most important thing is we all know telling another human being what we've done is humiliating.
Yep.
But sin is an act of pride. So pride is conquered by humility. And so even though we don't like it, we encounter not the priest, we encounter Christ. This coming Sunday is the woman caught in adultery. And Jesus says, "Woman, is there anyone to condemn you?" He says, "No, none." He said, "Well, neither do I. But from now on, avoid sinning."
But that's the beauty of reconciliation,
Yes,
which is, and to me, it lies in the forgetfulness
Yeah,
of the person that you're talking to.
it's true. And it's
Because in reality, what we engage in and what happens to us, I'm not going to say everything we do.
right.
But most of the things that we do that we should be ashamed of, if we are willing to admit that we should be ashamed of them, the rest of the world just lets it go.
Yeah.
Well, and look, as a Protestant, and having gone to confession and everything else, there is freedom in verbalizing
Yes.
where we fall short, and the beauty of it
Ring the bell.
is sitting there.
Ring the bell.
And
Yes.
when you look in, I'm going to use the term "man of God." When you look in a man of God's eyes, and you see the understanding and the forgiveness, there is gravity to that. There is weight and there is love in that, and it is something that is hard to express if you haven't gone through it. And as someone who for years didn't understand confession and everything else, I get it. I understand it. I see the necessity of it.
I haven't said this in a long time, but you know what I'm about to say.
I love you too.
Yeah, but on top of that, you are the most Catholic, non-Catholic I've
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
known.
Yeah. Well,
You are the most Catholic, non-Catholic I've ever known. And there's a beauty to that. Because essentially, what we hope everyone understands from this show is that the root of this show is that we are so flawed. We are literally just people just like you having a conversation. We're just willing to ask questions that we hope you're willing to ask too. And if you're not willing to ask the questions, well, then maybe to go back to that conversation about how humiliating things are, humiliation isn't always a bad thing if we look at it the right way.
amen. Look at the cross was our salvation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so you've met Father Joe, you've met Caleb, you've met me for an hour or two. There's also Danny at the bar, who Danny is just an Irish drunk, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, appreciate it. Danny, cheers to you. We appreciate you. We love you for that, and that
Here,
is
here.
okay.
With an Italian accent.
Correct, with an Italian accent. A last name Izo. I mean, there's no doubt that that's Italian.
Especially in the old country, Izzo.
Izzo. Oh, yeah, yeah. Just long as it's not Sicilian, we're okay.
I'm not.
You don't sleep with the fishes.
He talks like this.
And none of my friends have slept with the fishes.
And
as far as-
that's a good thing. Okay. So let's dive into, again, problems of the world. But before we do, let's talk about what's available at Mr. Lester's Steakhouse down at Cypress Bayou Casino real quick. They got some special bottles. They got some really great stuff.
I'm looking at it.
No, you're not.
Say again.
You're not looking at what's going to be available. Okay, so let me rephrase that. This will be available in the restaurant.
It is. Yeah.
You've got the Jack Daniel's Sinatra, which if you get to know us at all, you know that there's a little bit of the Rat Pack in this crew. There's a little bit of Rat Pack in this crew.
You think?
Just a bit. I don't know who pretends to be Frank and who pretends to be the others, right? But there's a little bit of Rat Pack here. The Jack Daniel's Sinatra, beautiful bottle, fantastic offering by Jack Daniel's. The offerings from Fourgate, excellent at what they do. So these will be offered. We will give away these bottles, as well as have them offered in the restaurant, as well as the bottle of Buffalo Trace. We're giving it away on this show in the next few weeks. So stay tuned. Find us on our socials, X, YouTube, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I'm sorry, that's the one I left out. Follow us, right? Because trust me, we want to give these bottles to the bourbon and whiskey community. But here's maybe the beauty of it. There is a Remus Gatsby Reserve at Mr. Lester's.
I haven't had that one.
No, you have not. The Remus Reserve is fantastic. The Gatsby is a step above that.
Ooh.
We drink a good bit of whiskey on this show. Never had a Gatsby. There is a bottle of George Stagg, not George T. There's a bottle of Stagg, which used to be Stagg Jr.
Yep. And Stag Jr. was amazing.
What I will tell you is, there's some special 1792 offerings. Oh, yeah. Go to Mr. Lester, see what they have on special. Because I'm telling you, Chef Willie, who's been on the show, is doing it dirt cheap to give to you, the whiskey drinkers between New Orleans and Houston, who want to have a 5-star meal. The only 5-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston, Mr. Lester's. Go there, get it. It's fantastic. They usually also have the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass series, which, Caleb, you don't like weeded, but I'm pretty sure you do some things you need to go to confession for to get this.
Yeah, this is not weeded. This is, I don't know what
It's
the right
weeded.
term for this.
It's weeded.
No, I don't want to call it that. It's I don't know what to call it. Like, Walker, help me out here. Doesn't even know what we're talking about. It's okay.
No, Walker's not even paying attention.
Yep.
This is how easy we have made Walker's job. Do you realize that? Walker is serving multiple masters here in hour 2. Walker, are you watching potentially a game that you might have wagered upon?
That is midget porn.
He's watching the LSU OU baseball game. He probably wagered money on it. Not on this game. Okay, good for you. Good for you. So there's a lot to it. End of the day, what we are talking about here is what's available at Mr. Lester's, what we are going to give away, the weekly whiskeys that we have, and where we are going to go in hour 2 of Implicit Bias Radio.
Wait. How long are we giving whiskey away?
We're giving, okay, I would love to tell you that I've run the math here, Caleb. I'm going to fess up. I haven't run the math. We have,
I see 8 bottles.
We have right at a case of each to give away.
Okay.
So this
I was
whiskey
doing
comes,
the math, and I'm like, wait, that's 8 bottles.
This
But
whiskey comes in 6-bottle cases. So we are going to give away, it'll probably be 4 bottles of each, because I'm going to need to probably fess up to Mr. Lester and let him know we're going to drink probably these bottles in here. But that's a whole nother story.
Well, here's the beauty
that
of it
brings
too,
it down
though.
to 5, and then there's some in the restaurant, which brings it down to 4 or less.
Isn't it better to give than to receive?
It
Father?
is. Well, he needs the microphone. Father's had way too many because he's like, yeah, this is solely.
And look, as someone,
So you can give to me. You know,
Hey, and look, when you give from the heart, like it's a transformative experience, right? So the opportunity to give this away to people to experience some of the stuff that we've had the blessings to taste and partake in, this is going to be monumentous. Like, I'm looking forward to this.
This really warms my heart to be able to give away to the whiskey drinking community that is the Implicit Bias Radio family. And look, we can't thank you enough, because if we like something on this show, we appreciate that you typically go buy it. We hear from those that are out there where they're selling this stuff that it's like, hey, if you guys give it a good rating, it flies off the shelves.
Yeah, there might be some people that have given up whiskey for Lent, you know.
Well, they
But
can't.
Easter is just around the corner.
I'm about to say,
Tell 'em.
who says they can't stockpile
and I
for?
must confess, I gave this up for, I belong to Exodus 90, so it's 90 days without alcohol. But I make exceptions when I come on this show. So this is an occupational qualification that I have to do, just lay down my life for you guys.
Okay, so hold on. So
I'm
Father-
the sacrificial lamb here, so I might have to go to confession, but I'm doing it for you. Okay.
Father,
I know a priest.
that is just
I got a guy.
that is so beautiful and so wrong, all in the same sentence. We cannot tell you how much. First of all, we hate and appreciate all at the same time that you gave this up, but yet you come on this show to do this. So let's talk about those though who serve two masters. And I'm going to go in on a profession that I know all too well because I did it for over a decade in some way, shape, or form. And some might argue that we still do it now. A journalist cannot serve two masters. And journalists all too often do. There is a report out. Please don't believe us. True journalists don't want you to believe them. True journalists don't want you to take their word for it. True journalists want you to look at the facts. But some journalists get caught up in serving that other master, that coinage that sometimes we need and sometimes we desire. There is a report out that Time Magazine accepted $4 million to name Vladimir Zelensky as a Person of the Year. So I'm going to start with, I didn't realize that we were utilizing different strains of human DNA as Persons of the Year. Elf of the Year, I would have figured. Right? Because if you've ever seen Zelensky.
I could see him as
gnome.
not an
Oh,
elf. Gnome.
no, yeah, he's not an elf. Gnome.
gnome.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Gnome. Yeah, Gnome of the Year, I could buy. And as somebody who's 5'8" on a good day, I can say that. Leave me alone. All right? But the fact that money is flowing back to journalists is a problem. Do we not see the conflict of interest there?
Well, and look, we live in a world where people are driven by likes, follows, social status, and they believe in self first and not God first, others second, you third. So it should be no surprise that people are for sale. It's when you realize that certain individuals don't have a price, and you shouldn't have a price. If you have a price in your head, then you're for sale. Everything else is negotiation. There should be no price, but many, many people are for sale, and it's how much are journalists and other people for sale for? Oftentimes, much less than we realize.
Danny?
I think the real question is, do they not see the conflict? And I'm afraid.
Tell me more, because I
afraid-
think that's profound.
I'm afraid that they don't. I mean, I'm not afraid. I'm fairly certain that they don't see the conflict. It's like several other stories that have come out. I mean, here's the journalist that ended up accidentally.
That got me in trouble. It's all right. What do you mean accidentally? Let's be honest. There was no accident. It was either a setup or a canary trap. It was one of the two.
Right.
This didn't happen because somebody happened to just miraculously put a journalist that nobody agrees with, who hates the administration, into a text string. That BS didn't happen.
No. And
It was
I mean,
on
everybody's
purpose.
like, talking about what a wonderful guy this is because he didn't make anything public until after all this stuff happened and yada, yada, yada. But you know what? Why not? If you know you're not supposed to be there, why not get out? The minute you realize.
That thought process got me in trouble.
Danny, would it be worse if they don't realize or if they do realize?
Oh, it's worse if they do realize.
I think it's way worse if they do realize.
I would think that most do. They just choose to ignore.
Yeah. But I mean, look, the other story that I've seen several times this week is different people talking about basically being Robin Hoods. One guy talked about he only steals from what's the vegetable place, the highfalutin vegetable.
The highfalutin vegetable place, Whole Foods?
Yeah, that. He only steals from Whole Foods.
Okay, I completely missed this story.
This sounds awesome.
And then
We are not advocating stealing.
No, please don't.
turns around and gives it to somebody else and talks about, I'm a good Catholic, but I believe that stealing from Whole Foods is okay because they're so rich and yada, yada, yada. And there have been two or three stories of people doing the same kind of. Another one talked about, I only steal from Amazon. And
Okay, so hold on a minute before Father Joe, as we slide the mic over to him. I want to chime in on this because this is a fantastic topic. The idea of Robin Hood is a great theoretical conversation, but where people mess up Robin Hood is this. Robin Hood and people. Let me step back. People who attempt to emulate Robin Hood say, I steal from the rich and give to the poor. Walker, get ready. I steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Amen.
Robin Hood never stole from the rich to give to the poor. Robin Hood stole from the government to give back to the poor.
Who were taxed to death.
Correct.
Yes.
Robin Hood was not someone who stole from individuals. Robin Hood stole from the entity that took from people,
Tax them into poverty.
and taxed them into poverty and gave them their money back.
Yep.
That's a huge concept. Stick around. More of those huge concepts and maybe huge other things coming your way on Implicit Bias Radio. Implicit Bias Radio, continuing the conversation from the last segment here in hour 2. I'm Kavan Bordelon in the chair like mine. He is Caleb Morris. You going to wave, Caleb?
Shaka.
Sitting there. Whatever. At the bar, we have Danny Izzo. We have Father Joe Campion. We were involved in a conversation about Robin Hood, who, please don't believe me, did not steal from the rich to give to the poor. He stole from the government to give people their money back. He stole from the sheriff and the king who overtaxed the people to give them their money back. Go ahead, Caleb.
When you say you steal from the rich to give to the poor, to a pauper, everything is rich, right? And to someone who grew up in a single wide trailer in a middle of nowhere, horrible trailer park, like a brick house looks rich. So taking money back from the government is very different than that. And that's the thing. The government should never steal from the people. The Bible does tell us, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. But the government will grow if we don't control it.
And so we were having a conversation about there's a very specific character that might have actually been one of the people taking for the government in the Bible, correct?
Matthew?
Oh, yeah. Back to the tax collector.
I hate how you were second to the microphone.
The priest in the room is like, I have no idea.
Yeah. No, Matthew, the tax collector, of course. I'm trying to think. There's probably a lot of people.
Well, therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes we know too much.
Yeah.
You were like Judas?
Judas, well, he took some 30 silver pieces,
Yeah,
but no,
he took-
Matthew was fleecing the people for the sake of the sake
Okay.
of the Roman government.
But hold on, Father. Let's go through this. So you say Matthew was fleecing the people for the sake of the Roman government.
His own people, the Jewish people.
Let's be honest. All of the tax collectors didn't just fleece the people for the
Oh
government.
no, they skimmed.
That was a common practice
Yes,
in that
absolutely.
time, correct?
Yeah, very prosperous life.
If you were a tax collector, you were wealthy.
Yep. And if you were a Jew and a tax collector, you were a traitor.
You were manipulating your own people
Yep.
as well as everybody else. In other words, so wait, hold on. So if you were a Hebrew tax collector, you were manipulating both sides against each other for your own profit?
Yes, and basically he was not doing anything to undermine the Roman government, so he was really supporting the oppression of his own people. No, he wasn't a double agent. He was supporting the
Himself.
Roman government.
He was literally serving multiple masters, and
Yes.
the one that he was really serving
Until he found Jesus.
was
Yep.
self.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Danny, you kind of brought this up.
Yeah.
What do you mean, Don't give me
Yeah. Okay.
You absolutely brought this up. And look, it's a fantastic pull of the thread because these characters are all throughout, not just that 2,000-year-old book. These characters are all throughout everyday life, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what made you make that leap and that jump?
I guess just that it's something that I've heard several times over the last week or so. People talking about stealing from specific entities because they're rich. And then in some cases, taking that and donating it to food banks and stuff like that and saying, and one guy even talked about his mother was just mortified that he was doing this. And over a relatively short period of time, he convinced her that he was on the right path. And I'm thinking, so here's two Catholics that have decided that stealing is okay if there's a supposedly greater purpose.
Well, I think a lot of it goes into justification theory, right?
Yeah.
So it's what can we justify and how can we justify it?
Exactly.
If it takes you more than 2 breaths to justify something, that's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Ring the bell.
And at the end of the day, theft is theft. Everyone in this building, everyone that watches this show, we all work hard for our money. And whether you make $8.64 an hour or, well, I can't imagine, $100 an hour, if someone takes a dime out of your pocket, it's theft. No matter what they do with it, it's theft.
Here's where I land with this. Literally, God gave us 10 very simple rules. Things that we should not do to each other to lead a good life. Don't worship any other God. Don't kill anybody else. I mean, literally, if you think about this, we had to be told, don't, and not kill, don't murder, which is different than kill.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn that.
Don't murder anyone else. Don't sleep with people other than the person that you have committed to, whose goal, by the way, is to make you better, to get you to heaven, and you're supposed to get them there too. That's a whole different discussion. But the other one was don't steal.
Mm-hmm.
Don't steal. And you have people who claim to be of faith who attempt to justify violating one of those very simple rules.
Well, and it's not hard. Look, God gave us 10. And we look at the Old Testament, they turned 10 into, does anyone know how many laws there were in the Old Testament?
613.
613.
So 10 became 613.
Which is what we do as humans.
And
You
then
know, you create one law, you got to create
And then
multiple
before
laws
they
to-
crucified him, they asked Christ, sum the law up into one.
Yeah.
And what did they say? What did he say?
Well, he gave you two. The top
Yeah.
two
Love your God.
Love your God above all others.
Yep.
And love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Inseparable.
If you do those, you can do 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can do 613. You can do, how many pages are in Louisiana's penal law code?
Oh.
Like 825?
That's it? I'm actually
That's
shocked that that's
penal
all
law.
we have in penal law.
So if you can do two, that's all he summed it up. He said two. It's not that hard.
Yep. You know, in political philosophy, to have class warfare or racial warfare or gender warfare, whatever you want to do, sexual orientation warfare, that's how you just keep division going and going and going. And then in our own Catholic Church, it was John Paul II. Just yesterday was the 20th anniversary of his death. He had to go into Central America where they were preaching, and within the Catholic Church, this liberation Marxist theology, which is pitting rich against poor, and that kind of theology it justifies stealing from others.
You're gonna bring me there because our current pope is from there. That's a whole nother discussion.
All right, I'm going to let people weigh in and call you a douchebag.
That's fine. Okay,
Wise.
here's the beauty.
Wisdom.
Good
Father,
choice.
here's the beauty of this. They won't be the first. They won't be the last. And none of them will like give a rat's ass about because we're going to call it what it's supposed to be called. And theft is theft. Truth is truth. This is why we have this conversation about how many masters do you serve. I mean, the reality is, and we've had this conversation on the show, if I love my wife more than I love my God, I will do terrible things for a human being. Things that I'm not supposed to do. Because I do. I love my wife that much. Caleb, I know you feel the same way about your wife. I know that, Danny, you feel the same way. But the reality is it's why we have to have one master. It's why who do you work for becomes a really big discussion. It's not your occupation. It's what is your vocation that is the discussion. Because at the end of the day, if my company that I work for comes to me and says, we want you to do this, and it is completely immoral, at what point do you say no? At what point do you say, you know what? You control my finances. You don't control my soul.
Well, how does the hymn go? I surrender all.
And that's the way it's supposed to go. But unfortunately, we don't go that route all too often.
I just wanted to back up a little bit and get your opinion on journalism because, like Danny's thought that maybe they're just not aware of it. It's my opinion, and you've been in schools of journalism. I just think higher education, college education is all left-leaning. And you are expected to have these talking points. So where the old Walter Cronkite style was you are there to, like Joe Friday, just the facts man. Here, it's going to be slanted from the beginning. And
Cronkite was a leftist.
yes, he was. Ultimately, he was. But
Cronkite
least-
was absolutely a leftist.
At least when he reported at the time, it was pretty objective. But you're right. Later on, his real colors showed. But you're supposed to hide those colors if you're a real journalist.
Here's the complexity of the dynamic. And it's this. It's as a journalist, the job is truly to put self aside. But at the end of the day, you will never tell a completely unbiased story. It's why this show is called Implicit Bias. We are owning what we are biased about. If you think that our government, Walker, take that finger and stick it. If you think that we are going to advocate big government, central control, telling people how to live, what they do, because the government controls all, protects all, takes care of all, you can, Walker doesn't have enough bleeps to edit out what I think you can do
excited.
with your lack of intellectual integrity, your lack of intellectual scope, your lack of intelligence, and ultimately your lack of what the Bible references, which is wisdom. The Bible doesn't care and doesn't think that you're smart. Congratulations, you went to a university, you got 3, 4, 5 degrees. You don't know, and here you go, Walker. You don't know. You know nothing about nothing. You are a smart person who has zero wisdom.
You're a wordsmith.
which is where a lot of journalists fall. Because journalists, as I was once told, and I take this as a compliment, I was once told, I love seeing what you do because you're a sports guy who's not a jock sniffer. You're not there just to praise people who can do things you can't. You will very quickly call out BS when you see BS. You will very quickly say, hey, this doesn't make sense. You will very quickly ask questions. But a lot of journalists want to be part of the club. And as we have not quoted him often enough on this show, George Carlin, well, we've quoted him often, but not recently. George Carlin once said, it's a big club. You, me, we ain't in it.
You've used Carlin's 7 last words on this program, so.
More than once.
Yeah.
More than once. But that's the point, which is it's a big club. We ain't in it. A lot of people who you think are journalists, they're not in it. They're fiction writers. They will write what they create in their own minds, and they have been conditioned to write. They don't write the truth. They don't write what are facts. They write what they think is best because they think that they get to determine what's best, as opposed to getting to write what's in reality, everybody's implicit bias. More after this. Penultimate segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon, coming to you from the Mr. Lester's TSPL, the top secret podcast lair somewhere in downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm your host, Caleb Morse, our co-host. At the bar, we have Father Joe Campion, who's trying his best to keep us Christian and Catholic because we try, but we just can't succeed. And then, of course, Danny Izzo, another great member of the crew here in the TSPL.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Oh, God, what, Caleb?
I got all flush. I think that's the first time you ever called me the co-host.
No, I've called you the co-host more than that. It's been the
Son
first
of a
time.
bitch.
It's been the first time in a long time.
Walker didn't even catch that. Like I was hoping.
Yeah, Walker will delete that. And actually, I don't even think that's bad. I think that's okay.
Okay.
I think that's all right. He doesn't need to edit that out. We've had a couple of edit moments on the show. One of the conversations I'd love to have this week is a story about an interview that Henry Ford gave to 2 engineers. When we talk about serving 2 masters, the question becomes, how do you figure out who's serving who? How do you determine who's serving who? So the story goes as this. Henry Ford brought in 2 engineers to interview and told the 2 engineers, I'm going to give one of you the job. We're going to have dinner tonight. We're going to have a conversation. Took them to dinner to a very exclusive club where they sat down. They had a beautiful, phenomenal, exceptional dinner. They get ready to wrap up dinner. And Henry Ford looks at one of the engineers and he says, congratulations, you've got the job. And the other engineer says, well, we didn't discuss anything with regards to engineering. We talked about nothing with regards to engineering. Can you help me understand why I didn't get the job? And he said, yeah, look, he said, we're going to excuse ourselves and you and I will have a private conversation. So the other engineer leaves, who's going to get the job. And the engineer who has been rejected is at this point peeved. And he says, why? Why did he get the job and I didn't, and we didn't talk about engineering at all? And he said, well, he said, the servers who came to the table, the other person, the other guy who was sitting here said every time, thank you, treated them with respect. You treated them like a servant. And he walked through the social graces of how each person treated those who were taking care of them at dinner that night. And he said, I now have an understanding of how you will treat people, how you currently treat people, and that is why you are not getting the job. The person who treats people with respect, with dignity, with honesty, that's the person who gets the job in my company. Now, I bring this up because the current corporate mindset is very centered on numbers, on people being treated as assets and not human beings. People being treated as resources as opposed to being recognized for the dignity that we are supposed to have from birth to natural death. You want to talk about how someone serves multiple masters? You want to see someone serve a master that is not right? Watch them treat people like a number. Watch them treat people like a replaceable thing, not as someone deserving of human dignity, which is above that of whether it's an animal or anything else on this planet. And I'm curious as to the thoughts here in the TSPL tonight as we record this episode with regards to what that looks like. Father Joe, I see you reaching for the microphone. I knew you'd chime in on this one.
Yeah, a lot of corporate America to me is looking at polished resumes and degrees and how good they come across in their GPA and how they've done academically. But I really, Henry Ford has what most of us need to have, and that's to look at the intangibles of a person's character. You can pick it up. You can see whether or not they have a heart for other people, whether there's a coldness, there's an indifference, whether there's a condescension attitude. You can pick that up very clearly. And for him to say, I don't care what a resume looks like, I want people in my company, they're going to show respect to everybody from the lowest job description all the way up. And that's biblical. And that's what Jesus identified on Holy Thursday. He's going to take the form of a slave and wash feet.
Ring the bell.
Yeah. And that's what we have to do. We have to look at people as human beings. And the coldness that we find in corporate America or in society isn't that way. So
life shouldn't be that way. Unfortunately, it is. Too many times it is. And Walker has given me the 1 minute finger, so we're going to close this segment out. We've got one more segment, and this segment might be the best story of the week because this segment goes into what you thought you knew versus what we really know on Implicit Bias Radio. Lots to accomplish in the last segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. We've got a great crew here in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair where we are about to give away a bottle of Elmer T. Lee. Yes, it is true unobtainium. Caleb, have you tasted Elmer T. Lee?
The first time I tasted it, I thought the bottle said Glee. So, yeah. Yeah. Is this bottle we're giving away, is it full or empty?
No, the bottle's full.
Damn.
And look, you have to go to Mr. Lester's to pick it up. So here's how we did this. During the break, I asked each member here in the TSPL to submit a name. So here are the names we have. Brandon Weaver, Jake Dyer, Tim Piku, Lisa Corville, and Zachary Voss. I am going to spin the wheel of names. And yes, if you actually want to watch this, I'm just going to let this come up. This is random. You can zoom in. We're going to figure out who the winner is. And congratulations, the winner is Jay Dyer.
Ooh.
So Jay, I'm going to send your name to Mr. Lester's. You're going to have the ability to pick this up. You'll have 30 days to go to Mr. Lester's, pick up your bottle of Elmer T. Lee. Congratulations. Glad you won. And we look forward to you letting us know what you think of this bottle of Elmer T. Lee.
Word of advice, drink it all by yourself.
Way to be selfish, Caleb. Yeah. Only serve one master, you, right? Which is what we have said not to serve this week on Implicit Bias Radio. Okay, so last story of the week. This is a big one. And this is one of those that if you're ring the bell because the conspiracy theorists were right again. So this week, not only did the CIA confirm it, but the Argentinian government confirmed it. Oh. What did it confirm, Caleb?
Maybe a man with a little mustache ran away to another government instead of committing suicide.
In other words, the history that we have learned, maybe there's a way to put this, is wrong. Is that maybe the way to put it?
Yeah.
It's wrong. Hitler apparently, much like someone else we know, didn't kill himself.
You know,
You like that?
yeah, I like that. Now that I think about it, did it say anything about Ava?
It did not say anything about Eva Braun.
I wonder if she really took the pill and Hitler was like, I'm out.
Danny?
Well, Hitler didn't die right away.
Well, the story that we are alluding to, number one, is that
He fled.
according to the CIA, according to the U.S. government, released on the internet, please don't believe us.
No.
And according to the Argentinian
Who
government,
confirmed.
please don't believe us on this. Hitler did not commit suicide in a bunker in Germany after World War II or at the end of World War II. He escaped via what they would call rat lines to Argentina and lived out his days until what, the 1980s is what they're saying?
Yeah.
So does that mean there really are a bunch of boys, maybe not from Brazil, but from Buenos Aires?
Danny, you need to tell us more here. I mean,
You don't know the story of the boys from Brazil?
walk me through this.
Well, supposedly it's a bunch of kids that Hitler fathered.
Keep
and
going.
Tried to train them to take up his place after he actually was gone.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is this.
But this was in Brazil because that's where he supposedly went instead of dying in the bunker in Germany. But
There
maybe it
are
was
there are
Buenos
small towns in Argentina where they exclusively speak German. There are towns in the mountains of Argentina, please, again, don't believe us on this, where they build Bavarian chalets. Why would you do this in Argentina? Father?
I have my sister-in-law up in New York, God rest her father's soul, but he was a physician in the Buffalo area, and he fled Germany to go to Bolivia. And for the longest time, I said, well, he would have been at that ripe old age of being a Nazi youth. I hate to say it, that crossed my mind. But subsequently, when I talked to him, as he was a very old man at that point, he actually was a Jewish man who was baptized in the Catholic Church, had the credentials from the Catholic Church, and then went to Bolivia.
Okay, you lost me here.
So what I'm saying is there was a lot of people that went to South America. Lots of people went to South America.
I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, that seemed to be the thing. Now, my implicit bias is I'm usually not open to conspiracy theories. I'm usually not.
Father, everything's a conspiracy theory. Look, there's a bell in front of you. Ring it. Because the conspiracy theorists were right, and you know this.
Well, they've opened up all the files to JFK. I'm keeping my mind open to what they find there. And also, we have to remember, it was the Russians that came in to Germany. We weren't there. It was the Russians that took over Germany.
Whoa. Are you saying that a lot of the history that we understand about what the Nazis did came from a side of the wall that we never saw?
In regards to the body of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Right.
And look,
Yeah, so you're talking about Russia, so we didn't have any access.
Well, and okay, so that's a whole nother, the Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
Where were they rooted? I mean, the Bolsheviks, if you look at what the Bolsheviks did, they were rooted in a particular philosophy, weren't they?
Right. Well, this is why I'm saying my implicit bias is that I'm not open to conspiracy theories. But
Given the facts.
Openings, the new information, you have to suspend that to get to the truth. You just have to.
Caleb?
there were many times whenever Americans weren't there, but were present. And the history books are always written by the victor, right? And sometimes it's best to not know what you're not told.
Oh, I disagree because if,
I disagree with that? Yes, but for the most of the population,
nope.
Once you know, you can't unknow, and most of the population wants to live in ignorance because that's bliss. Once
that's a
you know
problem.
the truth,
You can't unsee it. I agree with you. But here's my problem with it. By not knowing, it allows certain people to perpetuate a myth that didn't actually happen. And that creates your truth versus the truth.
Well,
and that in and of itself is a major issue because now you are serving the master of your truth versus what actually happened.
so what has changed?
And you don't even know it.
What has changed now? Because if you'd asked, probably, I know for sure you and I 3 months ago, if we thought Hitler escaped Argentina, we'd both like, oh yeah.
Sure. Possible.
Now it's confirmed,
Probable. Yeah.
right? Now it's confirmed. So what's different now than 3 months ago?
What's different now is that people have had time to actually absorb the learning, as opposed to, as we like to say, the truth sitting on their face and wiggling. That's the difference. Oh, Father, you know I'm coming to confession after that comment. Nope, that is not getting edited out.
But it goes to the fact that many people just ignore it.
Agreed.
They want to say,
There we
well,
go.
Danny?
They want to say that's the crazy conspiracy theorist. Oh,
That's
that's
it.
the crazy guys with implicit bias.
There's about 47% of the population of this country that doesn't want to hear that. And even when they do, it's just a conspiracy theory. And my implicit bias is there are very few, if any, conspiracy theories.
They're all true.
They're all conspiracies.
It's not that they're a theory, it's that they're just a
Right.
conspiracy.
Right.
And here's what we have to call out, and this is what I love about this. So first of all, you say 47%. I don't think it's that high. There's probably 20 to 30% of people who can't see the truth through the trees. But those 20 to 30%, you will never convince. You will never show them enough truth. You will never show them enough facts. You will never be able to present to them all of the truth that actually happened. This planet could have been invaded by aliens yesterday. You could have video evidence. You could know it. You could see it. You could absorb it. They could tell you that they've done it. And these same people would tell you, nope, you're a liar. You don't know. You are ignorant. And that is why we have to have implicit bias radio. Because without us presenting the other side of that conversation, without us saying, hey, we're not asking you to believe us. We want you to go look and learn on your own. Those people will never get it. Will never understand. They will never find truth in their own implicit bias. We'll see you in 7 when we give away more weekly whiskey.